Welcome to Hey, Great Shot. This is the Great Shot Podcast, a Cracked Racquets and Tennis Channel Podcast Network production. My name is Alex Gruskin. On tonight's show, we've got an NCAA tournament preview edition of The Deciding Point, where we will break down all 16 of this weekend's regionals in preparation for the opening round of NCAA tournament play, of course. If you joined us last night, you heard our live reactions as the 2025 NCAA tournament field was ultimately revealed, of course. Today, we want to break things down with some more depth. We want to talk about the seeds that are on upset alert. We want to talk about the seeds that if things break correctly, might find themselves in a little bit of trouble here this weekend as well. We want to talk about the top seeds who we expect to look the part, of course, break down our favorite individual matchups, first round play, get into every aspect of this 2025 NCAA tournament. So again, all of you college tennis fans are prepared for the impending action to begin. Of course, joining me on the podcast here tonight to help make that possible is the man you would want for a preview exercise such as this, a man who I promise you will see properly on your screen here in a moment, but a man, of course, you all know best as the returning champion of returning champions to this podcast, founder of the No Ad, No Problem blog and podcast, of course, our on-the-ground correspondent for so much of the 2025 season. This last weekend, he could, of course, be found at the Ojai for the Big Ten Women's Tournament. You, of course, also know him as one of our dearest friends. It's John J. Parsons joining us once again. Jay, hey, great shot. Welcome back to the show, now in a properly fitted frame. How are you doing here today, my friend?
Yeah, I was getting a lovely view of my strong hairline to start this show, but happy to be here in full view and happy to be here. We are finally here. We have the bracket. It is the final sprint. We are 6 matches away from crowning the NCAA champion, and we have a lot to break down.
Yeah, well, anyone who listened to our live reaction podcast know the biggest winners were the teams we discussed throughout the course of the show. The second biggest winner was your jawline, which received multiple compliments to start yesterday's podcast. So I'm glad now our listeners get to see it again here today. And as always, a shout out to super producer Daniel Westoff, who can fix anything in 2-3 minutes time. A shout out, of course, as well to the support we get from all of you college tennis fans. I was greatly appreciative that so many of you took the time to reach out, complimentary of my selection show performance. Obviously, we take our role seriously here at Cracked Racquets. We know it's our job to keep you college tennis fans informed, get you ready for the postseason, and obviously to feel the embrace from so many of you means a lot to us here at Cracked Racquets. It's why we do. It's why we're also so excited to be able to present the first 3 rounds of NCAA tournament play on our Cracked Racquets YouTube channel. We will have, as of now, 26 of the 32 regions as part of our coverage. You can follow all the day's action across multiple feeds on our Cracked Racquets YouTube channel. Again, helps now if you're an international viewer. You should be able to tune into it as well. So go subscribe to the Cracked Racquets YouTube channel so you can get a notification when play begins on Friday. Again, we will have coverage of each of rounds 1 and 2, 26 regions wide. Hoping that number grows over the next couple of days as well. At least I'm hoping. I don't know if Westoff's hoping because it just sounds like even more preparation for him. But certainly, again, a lot of fun coverage ahead. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel so you don't miss out on anything in this 2025 postseason. And with that postseason in mind, Jay, let's get right into it. Let's break down what obviously promises to be such a fun opening weekend of play. And look, let's not bury the lead. I have 5. That's right. 5 different host teams in my seeds on upset alert category as we begin our breakdown. And of course, I, calling the matches, am too big of a wimp and will not be making predictions here today. That's why it's always great to have John J. Parsons to help keep me honest and provide a little spine to a podcast that is far too often lacking it here of late. Let's get right into it, Jay. Number 1 on my list, with all due respect to a Washington team that has had a phenomenal season. And as I said on the selection show, their ability to play their way into this number 16 seed, that quarterfinal win at the Big Ten tournament over USC, one of the biggest wins for NCAA tournament purposes of the final weekend of the regular season. What are they? It's 3 losses, I believe, overall on the year for Washington coming into this one. The surface level resume for this team suggests top 16 seed. But, of course, they are not nearly as battle-tested as one of the teams in their region, a team that had to navigate the ACC all season long, a team that, of course, got off to, a 1-4 start before nearly playing their way back into the NCAA tournament top 16. By the way, I should say they were 1-4 through, February 20th. Of course, I'm alluding to Cal, who was one of the most dangerous unseeded teams, finds themselves in this region. The first-round matchups, Washington versus Stetson, Cal versus Sacramento State. They will both be heavy favorites to advance through those matches. Of course, we learned from the preliminary submitted lineups, no Katja Wiersholm, the senior who's been out for most of this 2025 season, out again for Cal here this weekend. I have 2 notes that I put here to set you up, Jay, and then I promise I will let you speak. Washington, 10-1 at home this season. I believe their lone loss was that 4-3 loss to USC. 10-1, though, at home. They're very good when they get to play at Nordstrom, indoors, outdoors, whatever it may be. I think they've also got a pretty clear path as well, looking at the numbers for this Washington team. They are very solid at doubles, and then they are really good at the 4 through 6 spots. And look, Cal's ability to find new pieces on courts 4, 5, and 6 with Wiersholm's absence, I'm not saying they have been bad in those positions. They are a little bit younger in those positions. And so certainly I feel like a doubles 4-5-6 path, it is there for Washington. Yet you could argue Cal's the favorite going into this one, Jay. What's your read on the region?
Well, I think whenever you put the 16 seed on upset alert, it's
Yeah.
a little bit of like a, yeah, duh moment, particularly because this Cal team was just outside the top 16, right? They were finished at 19. So these are two teams that know each other very well. We should also add the missing of Katja Wiersholm is just the tip of the spear in terms of missing players. And if they were not listed on the lineup, they will be out for the duration of the NCAA tournament. There are a few other examples of that. Unfortunately, I was a little bit surprised by that because we did see Wiersholm in that lineup for a few matches down the home stretch, but that's an unfortunate ending for this Cal team. Katja Wiersholm made the NCAA Sweet 16 in singles this past season, so that's a bummer for them. But these are two teams that know each other extremely well, conference foes for many years in the Pac-12. This Cal team has gone to Nordstrom before, unlike some of those Big Ten teams that were going there for the first time this season. So in terms of familiarity, these two teams are quite familiar with each other. I agree on the path of 4 through 6, particularly because those are players in Pasola Folch, Greta Greco that we haven't seen as battle tested as, Alsola, at number 2 for Cal, who's been looking very strong. And certainly the strength of that Cal team feels higher up in the lineup right now, particularly with no Wiersholm. So I think it's be a great match. It's hard to call it an upset, whoever wins this match, just because of how close they are in ranking, the familiarity. But yeah, I'm expecting this to be close.
That number 4 spot, McKenna Koenig, 13-2 for Washington, and yet 2-3-4. That meat of the Cal lineup, that feels like where they are so strong. And so, as I'm trying to make my calculus, not assuming everything's going to go according to script, but that battle at 4 is going to be what I'm watching most closely. You got a prediction for me? Who's advancing?
I'm going to go Washington. I think they got a really good win
Mm.
over USC to earn this sweet top 16 seed, right? They could have been outgunned by UCLA or USC there. And I didn't think Cal closed the season very strong, particularly in that 4-0 loss to Virginia at ACCs. Haven't seen much from them over the last few weeks that indicates that they're playing their best tennis. And I do think Washington is playing pretty well.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. By the way, 20-4, that final record for Washington. Just a quick correction there. Cal 13-8, and yet that one has 4-3 written all over it. Very much looking forward to that battle out in Seattle. Of course, next up on the list, number 15, Vanderbilt. And again, 16, 15, shock that those are on the list. I promise it's going to get more interesting as we move down.
Yeah,
to
we
Jay.
should say this is Gruskin's list. I mean, there are some omissions on this upset list, certainly.
We'll wait till we get to the if category. And then there's some even asterisks in the see you next weekend. Look, I violate my own rules. That's why I make them, Jay, for the thrill of that. But number 15 seeded Vanderbilt. Next up on my list, they are obviously hosting Xavier round 1. And then if they get through that, the winner of UCLA Harvard. Xavier, by the way, 5 straight conference tournament titles. What have you done successfully for the last half decade? Short list, I imagine. So shout out to, again, Coach Matthews and the team.
But you've hosted this podcast.
5 years. Turns 8. Next
So
month.
I would say 5 successful years then.
Maybe. How long have you been on the show? Since we turned you from only guest to submit Q&As for the Q&A to what if we just made this guy a host? One of the best decisions, by the way, we've made in Cracked Rackets history. Vanderbilt. They're hosting Xavier round 1, then the winner of UCLA Harvard potentially round 2. Obviously talked about it. Stella Sampras Webster, head coach for UCLA, also mom of Vanderbilt freshman Sophia Webster. Just a fun subplot to monitor. UCLA is built for this. We've seen them do this as recently as 2 years ago, and obviously last year, the nucleus of this group, pretty much everyone but Feng Run Tien back, they went to the quarterfinals and probably should have been semifinalists. And even with their struggles this year, you feel like they're up 1-0, regardless of who they're playing. And once you're up 1-0, roll the balls out. Anything can happen. Now, there have been some prominent struggles in a way you certainly didn't expect, given, again, you had Guichard, you had Fernandez, you had Center. You feel like you had 3 real options at 5 and 6, and you still don't know who those choices are for UCLA. On the Vanderbilt side, you know what you're getting in Moore, in Ray, in Stammel up top. And, again, they found some consistent. This Vanderbilt team's good. They beat Texas A&M. That's how good they are. And they played their way after a first match loss in the kickoff weekend. Let me say that again. They lost to UCSB match 1 in Ann Arbor during the kickoff weekend, and they finished as a top 16 seed. Heck of a job by Coach Subanos and the Doors here this season. I love this match, Jay. What's your read on it? What's your prediction?
This feels like an upset in theory rather than one
Mm.
in practical reality because we just have not seen that version of UCLA that we were expecting. This is a preseason number 5 team in the country that has underdelivered every single week. And I don't know, but it's worth calling out as an upset because according to Chris, this match is not going to be played at Vanderbilt. It's going to be played at Middle Tennessee. And so you remove some of that favoritism for being played on your home courts. But yeah, it's going to be close, and UCLA can certainly win this. We've seen them do it against Duke, but and Vanderbilt didn't end the season that strong, right, in terms of their SEC performance. So I don't know. Two teams that I feel like do have something to prove didn't probably end their season in the fashion that they wanted to. I thought UCLA started their push against Michigan a little too late in that Big Ten semifinal. So this should be a close match. It's certainly worthy of being in upset category as the 15 seed here because it's very possible that this UCLA team decides to show up come NCAAs.
Vanderbilt's been really good at 1, 2, and 3. They have struggled at 4, 5, and 6, played various different permutations. Amy Stevens has settled into that 6 spot, but again, 4, 5 are toss-ups for both teams, more so that 5 spot in particular. And so there could be swings. Here's a hot take. Who's going to play better on the given day? Like, it's going to be my prevailing theme of I don't know if the better team on paper is always going to win. I just think it's going to be, hey, who plays better? Who can handle the pressures of this moment best? This feels like one of those matches, and that's the lean towards UCLA, as they have just so thoroughly, this nucleus, been here before, probably still remember how that Tennessee match ended and are finally ready to make amends for that moment from last season. And yet, man, again, Vanderbilt's really good. This is going to be a really fun match. 15 and 16 seeds should be pushed. They will be. You go in Vanderbilt ultimately in the end here, Jay?
Yeah, I'm going to lean Vandy in this one.
Okay. Fascinating. Keep an eye on that one, of course. Next up on the list, and again, I'm going to start working in some of the graphics as well so you can see what these matchups are. How about 12th seeded NC State? They, of course, hosting Charleston Southern round number 1, and then if they get through that, the winner of UCF versus Furman. Of course, this is one we immediately pointed out, Jay, and it's worth noting as you look at those lineups, and a thank you to you for tweeting out the link, available now for everyone. Jay Tweets Tennis on Twitter. Michaela Lockey has been out with injury for the last month-ish for NC State. She's listed at the number 1 spot for NC State. Feel like they might need her. Taking on a UCF team that, of course, has those 2 4-3 wins over Oklahoma State. They put 3 hours on the clock, and they make you earn it. Just will grind everywhere. Really fundamentally sound, as you would expect a team coached by Brian Cagneco and Francesca Di Lorenzo with those Ohio State roots to be. I love the contrast of styles. I love the matchups everywhere. Obviously, what Olivia Lincer's done to end the season, taking on an Anya Ziranova, who coming back from injury has probably been your comeback player of the year, given her circumstances of the fall here this spring. No disrespect to Furman or Charleston South, but this might be the best matchup of the opening weekend, NC State UCF, if that's what comes to fruition. What's your read on the matchup, Jay? How are you feeling?
Well, I think it's going to be intriguing. I think we're not going to see Michaela Lackey, although she was listed at number 1. We haven't seen her since she retired in that Miami match against Alexa Knoll. I think the big challenge I have with UCF, and honestly the Big 12 more broadly, is there's no evidence that UCF can beat a top 16 team. They haven't done it this season. The only top 16 team that they've played is Texas Tech, and they've lost twice. Their best wins are against Oklahoma State, ranked 20. And so it's hard for me to envision them doing this in the second round of NCAAs against a more experienced program in NC State at home. And so for that reason, I lean NC State. I think even without Lackey, they have enough of a pedigree in doubles. And throughout that singles lineup, they started the season 8 deep. And so I do think they're able to get through this match.
UCF reminds me a lot of my beloved Detroit Pistons in the sense that, look, we are going to play the Knicks frisky in every game. here in this series. And if you play the cards right, there's a world where we win this series. But it's probably not this year. This is the lump you have to take in the playoffs before you can go on that run to the conference finals or to the final site in the case of NCAA tennis. This UCF team outside of Sophia Biolay is so young. Again, Linzer, sophomore, Bergler, freshman, Elayuni, freshman, Sonka, freshman, Rylet, freshman. This is a super talented group that Coach Cagneco and Coach DiLorenzo have on their hands. Is it a year early? Maybe. But boy, this team believes. Like, I saw them fight off those 4 match points. Obviously, a Linzer-centric 4 match points fought off against Oklahoma State. And they did it twice. Like, once on the road in Stillwater as well. Both times, obviously, Melissa Urcon, I got to correct, and I had to pause in my head, was active in both matches for Oklahoma State.
We were going to maybe see them play, Urcon and Lockie, 2 players
Sure.
that you cannot distinguish between.
Both excellent recruits. Both Parsabombs printed somewhere in the back of my memory. It's at NC State, which is a really tough place to play, and if there's any signs of rain on those 4 indoor courts, that's where NC State suffocates you. But I am fascinated by this match because I've seen that UCF fight. Like, I got to watch it in person at the conference tournament. I got to call the match against Oklahoma State. They just fight and fight and fight, and you have to go take it. And for players like Broadfoot, not Zampardo because she was part of the run last year, but even then, still, she's a sophomore playing now in the higher part of the lineup for the first time. Can't think, oh, don't worry, Rietsky's got me. Oh, don't worry, Ziranova's got me. Like, no, it's kind of on her now. The Paskowski, like, first serious postseason run. It's young. It's a young matchup, and young matchups, funky things happen. So that's why they have to be in the upset alert category, Jay. But is it 4-3 range for you or more 4-1 range?
4-2. I'll split the middle.
Yeah, okay, that's what I figured. I wanted to offer that lane.
Yeah, and I think maybe because this is such a young UCF team that explains some of the schedule, but if they do want to crack into the top 16 and have evidence that they are deserving of that upper echelon here, like, they have to schedule tougher. This schedule does not suffice. The Big 12 is far too weak to be playing a Big 12 only conference schedule.
Fair. I would also point out very young team. And year 2, year 3 scheduling, I would expect to look different. Like
something we'll be watching for next year.
Very, very good point. And good call by you. All right, next up, we stay in this region. I think number 13 LSU has to be on the list because as I was running through all the matchups in my head, and I actually sent Jay my notes this time, folks, abbreviated version, but I sent him some notes. And the first thing that I have on my list, LSU 13th seed hosting SFA and USC versus Memphis, is USC is good enough in doubles to go up 1-0 on everyone. And as you look at the singles matchups, and yes, you do have Deckers listed at number 5 for LSU, something you can talk about more here in a second, Jay. But where has LSU been so strong? 1, 2, 3. Where do you feel like USC's biggest strength lies? Doubles 4, 5, 6. It's kind of the perfect inverse matchup. And you just feel like with that doubles point, again, USC has the depth in doubles. Maybe Brace and Cross do their thing at 1. But boy, USC will keep coming with a similar level at 2 and 3. And I just wonder if they can go up 1-0. With the depth that roster has, can they go into LSU and knock off a young Tiger team still here in the opening weekend? It's why I have it in upset alert. What do you think?
I think LSU would have been on upset alert, period, based on how they finished the season. Even getting Cross back, the way that they lost to Oklahoma just did not instill a ton of confidence in how far they can go in this event. The problem is I feel a little bit burned by this USC team in the past, right? They have fallen into this 16 through 20 range. It feels like the past few seasons. I recall when they were going to Athens on the road, we kind of had the same conversation, right? Like they could be ripe for an upset and it didn't happen. And I would sort of push back a little bit on the strength of this USC team because they lost at 4, 5, and 6 just past weekend against Washington. And so I'm not sure I've seen a ton of evidence right now that that's going to be a calling card for this USC program right now. It's where you need to kind of get your wins, certainly against LSU. I agree with you on doubles. I think they continue to look very good there. They took that doubles point, very close doubles point against Washington. I just haven't seen some of the evidence to suggest that they're going to go into Baton Rouge and pull off this upset.
Pointed out earlier how good Washington is at 4, 5, and 6. I have the numbers out in front of me. Number 4 spot, they are 12 and 6 on the year. Number 5 spot, they are 10 and 4 on the year. And you're right, 6 has been more of a struggle than I had anticipated. 9 and 6 overall on the season. Yeah, 4 and 5 more than anything. 6, you just feel like it's a toss up both ways. You're right. It comes down to the doubles. You're up 1-love, and now you have a young team down at home. And how do they respond? Can Grace Piper have a day at the number 1 spot? She's 11 and 6 overall there all season. You feel like D. Girolami is a spot you would really lean towards at 3, given some of USC's struggles there this year. But yeah, you're right. It is more on paper still than in reality for this USC Trojan team this point of 2025. And yet, again, they're really good at doubles. This LSU team is young. They did not finish the season particularly well. I think it's worthy of being in the category more so than the if. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it's worthy being in the upset category because it's very possible. And like the best version of this USC team can beat this LSU team. I just don't think we've really seen the best version of this USC team since January.
Not an unfair assessment. Who you leaning? What's the pick?
I'm going to go with LSU, and I think it's like a 4-2.
All right, fair enough. Well, then, last but not least, in my upset alert category. By the way, like our pace here tonight, Jay. Let's move over to the number 6 seeded Oklahoma, who I think has to be in this region. Even though I would point out what you said earlier. For the Big 12, a lot of it feels more in theory than in practice because there's not a ton of outside evidence. And the problem is when Oklahoma State provided the lone outside Big 12 evidence here this season, they were without Melissa Urquhart, 2 for 2, earlier this season, obviously through the national indoors and before the start of conference play. There's no secrets between these teams. Oklahoma taking on Denver round 1, Oklahoma State taking on Tulsa. Obviously, winners play winners. I mean, what version of Oklahoma State do we see? The big discussion, and we'll see if it holds. I wonder if there will be a protest. I don't dispute the decision to move Rosemarie Nijkamp, the freshman, up to the number 3 spot, given her success. Kylie Collins down to 4, given some of her struggles this season. That was the big lineup piece, of course, as you looked at the Cowgirls roster. I mean, the idea of Garcia Ruiz versus Komar at that number 2 spot, God, do I love the contrast of just energies and styles in that matchup. And I do think the feistiness of Garcia Ruiz would bring out the best of Komar. Look, these two aren't in the same conference anymore, so that we get to see it here this year. I don't think I need to explain an interstate rivalry to any college athletics fans that we have tuning in. Jay, what intrigues you most about this region?
Well, first off, we said this on the reaction show. Oklahoma drew the short end of the stick. I thought NCAA committee chair Chris Young, also the head coach of Oklahoma State women's team, did a nice job explaining that the 400 rule has the committee's hands tied behind their back. Oklahoma State could go to one place under 400 miles. That place was Oklahoma. They are not in the same conference. It's not an if they would go there. Per his words, they had to go there. Does that throw out integrity? Yes, definitely, because a 6 seed really shouldn't be playing a top 20 team in the first round. So get that out of the way. But this
Can
is
I
going to
interject quickly? What did you think of the Coach Young interview? I didn't get the chance to ask you about it.
Yeah, I mean, I tweeted out after I listened to it because I thought it was really worth listening for folks. I think he does a good job explaining how the committee's hands are tied, right? He answered your question about UCLA versus Texas A&M men. Like, oh, is that a discussion? No, not a discussion because the formula rules. And so the formula rules say that Texas A&M was a 16 seed. Nothing matters. The fact that A&M is playing their worst tennis, they don't even submit J.C. Roddick in the lineup, and that UCLA is on an 8-match win streak. They just beat Ohio State for the first time at home since 2003 in a Big Ten match. Like, none of that factors in.
Yeah.
Should it? That's a different conversation. But those aren't the rules that govern the creation of this bracket. So we should have the conversation about, like, well, let's change the rules. Let's get rid of the 400 mile. And I think Coach Young did a good job explaining that as committee chair, he is in favor of that. And I think that was really important for people to hear. And I thought he also gave some really good tactical advice for coaches that are looking at this bracket saying, like, this doesn't make sense. Great. Like, competition oversight reach out to your administrators to get tennis included in the program that removes the 400-mile restriction. That's step one. I think step two would be looking at some of the rules we have in place today, like top 50 wins. That one feels a little bit superfluous to me. So I enjoyed the interview. I think it's great to elevate tennis, right? You see all these other sports, the NCAA committee chair comes on and discusses their decision-making process. And I think, it was a little revealing to understand that maybe in those other sports, they do have more discretion in those committee decisions than they have here in tennis. But I thought it was a really good listen. If people haven't listened, they should definitely check out the last 15, 20 minutes of yesterday's episode.
I appreciate you saying that. We've also now released it as a separate Cracked Interviews podcast because, to your point, I think it's the sort of educational session that college tennis fans deserve. Because for those who aren't as ensconced in the inner circle, as I hate to tell you, buddy, you are right alongside of me now at this point. You're inner circle Jay. Like that's what they're calling you in the streets. To have Chris be willing to come on and be as candid in revealing, yes, it is formula first, and this is how that formula works for college tennis fans who think it is an arbitrary process and just a bunch of people, maybe not cigar smoked filled because it's 2025, but in a back room just saying, let's put him there, them there, this there. Like, that is not how it works. And he explained what that pilot program looked like and the alternative and why he supports it. And to your point, how to further that support programs wide as well. And so appreciate your thoughts. Yes, everyone can go listen to it now. What should they be watching for in this one, Jay?
Well, this is going to be a heated matchup because unlike a lot of these regionals, despite this 400-mile rule, most non-hosts are not going to bring fans. Oklahoma State will bring fans. They're under 100 miles. They can bus people there. This is going to be a heated match. These two teams know each other very well despite not playing this year. And Oklahoma's going to be upset that they have to play this Oklahoma State team, and Oklahoma State's going to want to win. So this one certainly likely has the most spice of any of these second round matches. Oklahoma State, on paper, can win. They have the talent to do that. But this Oklahoma team has been far more consistent and battle tested playing in the SEC. So they are still the favorite to win this match. I like them at a few single spots. I have no issues with Kylie Collins moving to 4. I think, honestly, if she stayed at 3 over Nykamp, you protest that because Nykamp has been that good for them. So it's going to be a very close match, and I hope that there are a lot of fans for it.
The idea of Collins versus Staker in a elimination match for the two seniors, just like, here are my veins, inject now, because that's must watch. One of my favorite individual potential matchups we may have here this weekend. I mentioned Garcia Ruiz Comar. Obviously, the energy Oklahoma plays with just inspires energy out of opponents, and certainly this is a muted Oklahoma State team. They aren't as fiery as perhaps others are so openly. If we see that version of them, yeah, like, ceiling is as high as you can imagine for this group that obviously when we learned about the addition of Erkan, you thought had some serious expectations and thought that would be different coming into postseason play. This is also an Oklahoma State team. There are some members. Komar has got to remember that feeling from last season and just wanting to be the upsetter and not the upset. It's going to be a really – and yet Oklahoma's going to be ready. Like, and they are on their home courts, and they will be ready for the fight, and they will have the furiousness of a team feeling scorned by the selection committee. Yeah, it's the match of the weekend. Like, that's the number one, just because there is so much history between the two programs as well. This is why I'm happy to not be in your chair, Jay. Give me the pick.
Well, I hate to do this just because I've been chalk this entire time, but I am going to go with Oklahoma here. I think the mind says Oklahoma wins. They have been consistent end to end this season. We've actually seen no massive upside from this Oklahoma State team. It's not like they went on a run in the Big 12 tournament. They lost again to UCF in similar fashion. So again, I said this before, but like from an evidence perspective, like we have no evidence to believe that Oklahoma State should be beating this Oklahoma team. We have all the evidence in the world to suggest that Oklahoma gets through this match, but it's going to be very fiery, as we talked about, but I'm leaning Oklahoma.
Yeah, again, Glow, Mew making their postseason debuts as well. How do they handle that moment? They handled it very well at the national indoors. Um,
Should also say Lucia Pyre was listed in singles. She was
mm,
listed at 8. I was surprised to see her there because we haven't seen her all season, but something to potentially monitor.
no big difference between 8 and 7, and you wouldn't feel like we'd see her higher than 6, certainly in this lineup. But yeah, fascinating, fascinating, fascinating. For all you know, maybe Obi's coming back. No, not listed, so there will be
Not
no.
listed.
Yeah, no Kajuru for Oklahoma State this weekend. That was a joke. Those are my 5 in the upset alert category. 0 for 5 on upset picks from Jay. I'm a little disappointed, Jay. Just ever
You
so
don't have to
slightly.
reveal, but would you have picked an upset in this category? And how many?
That's a great question. What I was hoping you wouldn't ask. Yeah, I would have picked one. Um, and I think if you have listened to this show over the year, you know the one that I am thinking about. But I would have picked one. Or would I have picked two?
Hmm.
A coach texted me and said over under 1.5 upsets this weekend, and I said over, barring me seeing the draw. And I'm going to stick with that. I would have said two in this category. I think two would have gotten snuck out. I'll tell you after the show. We'll save it for the Patreon fans. No, I'll tell you after the show, Jay, who are the two I was thinking of. But I think I would go with two. That feels about the right number here this weekend.
Yeah, we
Good.
typically see maybe 1 to 3 max.
Yeah. And so, again, those are the five: Washington, Vanderbilt, NC State, LSU, Oklahoma, all in the upset alert category. Category number two: if things break right, can the following teams pull off the upset, Jay? I've got three in the if category. Let's start with number 11, Texas Tech, because they have the if team of 2025 in their region, of course. Texas Tech taking on Boston University in round one. Winner of that will face FIU versus Stanford in round two. The if is, of course, what version of Stanford do we ultimately end up seeing a Stanford team that just has not been healthy through all of 2025? And here's the thing. This is why it's in my mind, Jay. I watched the Wake Forest match. I think it's the third time I've talked about it here on this show. They just looked like a top 16 team. Like, even with Yepifanova's compromised serve, with Valencia Shu serving overhand, with Connie and Valerie doing what they were doing at the top two spots, Driscoll a real piece in the middle of that option. Like, that Stanford team looked good. And if that's who Texas Tech sees, like, again, it's a Texas Tech team with expectations. It's a Texas Tech team that has to defend their home courts. It's a fascinating matchup as well, just given the strengths across the board. You do feel like the path is there for Ma, Glosman to do their things perhaps at the top two spots. But the idea of Glosman, Dmitrichenko, that becomes a top three individual matchup, by the way, of the weekend. By the way, FIU was undefeated for 4 months here this season before getting knocked out in the conference tournament. They're really good at the number 1 and 2 spots as well. That first round match with Stanford, one of my favorites. Jay, is it fair to put this in the if category? Would you have moved it up one, down one? What are you thinking?
Yeah, it's definitely in the wrong category. It's massive upset alert for
Okay.
sure. Uh, I mean, this is Texas Tech is the top 16 seed with the most questions going into this. They have one top 20 win, which was over NC State in January, right? And they've siloed themselves into the Big 12. They are playing the winningest team in women's tennis history in Stanford with a senior class in Connie Ma, Valencia Shu, and Yepa Fanova, who have under-delivered from what expectations were, who have already hit some program nadirs for this Cardinal program. The last thing those three seniors want to do is lose in the second round for one of the only times in Stanford history. I know they lost in 2021. I think that was the first time in like 20 years they've lost in the second round. The last thing they want to do is lose their final college tennis match in the second round of NCAAs in Lubbock, Texas. I would hope that you would have to drag all three of those players off the court before they lose their match. I think that's the version of this Stanford team we're going to get. Texas Tech will win doubles. That is without question for me. I don't think they're going to win at 1 and 2. I think Stanford wins at 1 and 2. And other than Gruskin's eye test, we really have no evidence to know how good Texas Tech is at 3 through 6. You know what you're going to get from Stanford. You know you're going to get Driscoll fighting at 3. You know Shu's going to be at 4. She's going to be a nightmare to play in the wind. And then you're going to have Yepifanova, who saved 6 match points in that Miami match, in what she is going to deliver again here, hoping it's not her last college tennis match. I would be very surprised and disappointed if we don't see the best of Stanford in potentially their final match here.
What a great case. This is why you have John J. Parsons on the show. Look, Jermaine Sharif has been awesome at 6, and I think given Stanford's struggles there, whether it's Okpara, it will be Okpara, and not Schaefer, like I'm still leaning Sharif there at that number 6 spot. I also think Texas Tech in doubles, to your point, they're the sort of decisive team. After watching Valencia Shu underhand her way to so many sets this year, first of all, she's serving underhand. They have bigger problems, of course, for Stanford. But like, I just think even regardless, the aggression that Texas Tech plays with in doubles on their home courts, I think they come out hot.
Yeah,
I think they do.
They're winning doubles. You don't have to sell it.
No, they're grabbing. But so that's the thing is, I see the path to 2-0 very, very quickly. Everything else is a fight. And Saifetinova, also a senior, the energy she brings is everything you love in college tennis. Her versus Connie could be fireworks. I already mentioned Dmitrichenko, 20-1. Like her versus Glasman, the best freshman in the country. Fireworks. You're right. Like 3 through 5 is where this match is won. And it's going to be war across the board that Shu and Yepifanova are playing to extend their careers. You summed that up perfectly. And again, when this team made the semifinals in 23, and Ma and Yep and Shu were all sophomores heading into the back half. You had Hui and Yu coming in. You still had Blokina around as well. You just thought, like, there's no way that this was a blip. This was the exception to the Stanford rule.
You thought it was the COVID blip, right?
Exactly.
Impacted by COVID.
Exactly. You're right. This should have been in the upset category for me to underway a storyline. Am I losing it, Jay? After a half decade, am I losing it? This is why I have to have you on the show to keep me honest. Give me the pick.
Look, there's a tale of two Stanfords here, right? There is the one that gave the underwhelming performance in the quarterfinals against Georgia last year, and we had a very frank conversation about the future of the Stanford program. It has been a brutal year for Stanford. Everything has gone wrong. I think this is as favorable of a draw as they could have ever asked for. I think they take advantage of it, and I think they get through. I think they beat Texas Tech.
Whoa! Okay, now we're talking. This is the Jay I needed here tonight to just offset my glass half fullism. Yeah, it's going to be an awesome match. Put it on the list. Again, and a lot of great individual ones in there. I'm telling you, Glasman, Dmitrichenko. That's the one to watch for me at 2. Next up in the FFF category, also in this quarter of the draw, 14th seeded Texas. Why do they have to be here? Well, Chris mentioned it last night. He was on the call when Baylor was whiskers away from knocking off this young Texas team in the kickoff weekend. They lost ultimately as the Longhorns took it 4-3 in Austin. Texas, Grand Canyon round 1. Baylor takes a Boise State team that, again, for them to rebound the way that they did. By the way, the controversy at the end. Ugh. You just hate to see a match end like that. 15 minutes of argument. Should OLED have been called, overruling the call twice, and after the shirts and hats had already been handed out, you could see coaches ready to dump Gatorade to try and spike the court. One of the officials sprinting over and be like, "Don't you dare!" I mean, it was just a fascinating finish, but for Boise State's women to deliver that win after the men lost a heartbreaker the day before to New Mexico, it was cool to see. First time in a decade they've gotten in. I promised I would address it on the show. So there's the addressing here today, Jay. But again, all signs point to a Texas-Baylor round 2 matchup. Baylor's got deep singles lineup. Like, they grind at 4 and 6. Taglia at 1 can always be frisky. I mean, again, this is a Texas team we saw beat Georgia at the end of the season and look to be playing towards their best tennis once again, as Texas teams always seem to do, peaking towards May. It's still such a young group. It's a fascinating region. If, I think applies here, Jay, but what's your read?
I think it does apply just because we saw how close this match was. And Zaynalova was in this match against
Hmm.
Baylor in the season. It was essentially a full slate. But the difference being CKP was not in that lineup, and Baylor takes doubles. I think she's been a difference maker for them in doubles, maybe less so in singles. And so she will be in that doubles lineup. And so I think Texas reverses that trend here of losing doubles. And Baylor was only able to find two singles points against this Texas team. Look, Texas, obviously they got the win over Georgia, and we thought, uh-oh, here they come, right? We're starting to see it, and then right back around, they don't look as good in the SEC tournament. And we saw a lot of that in the SEC play. My guess is that a lot of these freshmen were hitting a very expected wall, especially going through a brutal SEC schedule. I think 2 weeks off is going to be much needed for this young freshman team. I do think they get through this Baylor team, and I think it's going to be less close than what we saw earlier this season, 4-3. I would go 4-1 probably feels like the right score here.
All right, fair enough. Well, then, last but certainly not least, let's move over to the fifth category to 10th seeded Tennessee. You look for these Vols, obviously, for them to be a top 16 seed, given they were replacing 4 of 6 single starters from last year's semifinal team. It speaks to the job Coach Ojeda did this year. And look, they were in the top 8 hunt all year long, right until the very end. They get to host the first 2 rounds. I think that had to have been the goal. Top 8 was the pipe dream and certainly obtainable, but again, mission accomplished. And they're dealt two tricky teams. I got to see a lot of Wake Forest. What Navina Carton and the gang have done this year, that is a sound squad. Of course, the contrast in their round one opponent as they take on a youth laced Pepperdine Waves team that again fascinates, absolutely fascinates me, Jay. Um, yeah, look, it's what version of Pepperdine do we get? Still very talented. No Savannah Broadus this weekend, not submitted in the lineup. You'd hate for this to be the way the All American's career ends with injury. Um, but look, I mean, again, that Wake Forest Pepperdine winner is going to come in calloused and frisky against Tennessee in round number 2, assuming the Vols get there over Elon. I think this belongs in the if category, Jay. It's just the level I've seen from Wake and Pepperdine. Again, the talent they have top to bottom in the lineup. No obviously attackable spots. I think we're getting 4-2 tennis at a minimum.
Well, very familiar opponents. Tennessee has played
Sure.
both Pepperdine and Wake Forest, and it was really that Wake Forest match to start the year. And it was their first match, and I said, uh-oh, this Tennessee team has really fallen off from a Final Four caliber team. They really got pushed. They were likely going to lose that match. I know Tomase came back and I think got the win. And then they also played a 4-3 match against Pepperdine. That was a 4-3 match where Broadus was in the lineup. And we should say Savannah Broadus's career is over. Um, Tough to say, but again, people not listed, like they are done. So really tough ending for her to not be able to get over the finish line here with this team. But that's a massive blow, of course, in doubles and in singles. I think this is a close second round affair, but I think the benefit that Tennessee has was hosting last year and having Duke come to their house and have to knock off that Duke team. I think they know that you can't overlook any opponents here. And you're going to have to play your best tennis from the get go if you want to make another deep run. So I think having that experience will help this Tennessee team. So I expect them to get through.
All right, fair enough. Again, my 8 closest to upset, and we go 1 for 7, 1 for 8 in Jay picking upsets so far. I feel like that's low on your end, my friend. So perhaps you've got a surprise for me remaining.
I don't know if I have a surprise, but I do feel like generally this draw is pretty well balanced.
Okay.
Um, so we'll see.
All right, fair enough. Well, then, last but not least, let's get to a category I like to call "See You Next Weekend," which is, of course, top seeds I expect to maneuver comfortably through this opening weekend of play. Let's start with top seeds Georgia. They host at Florida A&M in round number 1. If they advance there, the defending finalists will face the winner of Iowa and Georgia Tech. Certainly a very fun opening round matchup as well. But what are you looking for most from the Dogs here in their opening weekend?
Well, just a continuation of what we saw in the SEC tournament, right? They really bounced back after that Texas and Texas A&M loss to end the regular season, and so looking for continuity there. I'd like to see Vidmanova get a few really straight set wins there because she was one of the players that wasn't able to deliver some singles victories for her team. So I would just say a continuation.
All right, two others I have in this quarter of the draw. See you next weekend. Number 8, Duke. They host Bryant round 1. Would face the winner of FAU Old Dominion. A really fun non-Power 4 round 1 matchup for non-Power 4 supremacy. There, Big Duke Noke, Havdi 1, Ballast 2. Obviously, both have struggled to end this season in those top two spots. What are you looking for most from the Blue Devils this weekend?
Well, yeah, good shout out. I love the FAU ODU first round match. That's really fun to, again, what I like for a first round match is two teams in very different conferences. It's one of the reasons I like the Alabama men versus Pepperdine men. Like
Mm-hmm.
those aren't conferences you see much of. And also a first round match where it's like, hey, this is a really challenging first round, but it's also winnable. Those are always super fun. And I feel that way about this FAU Old Dominion match. Duke, I need to see a lot from Duke, right? I mean, you need to see Havdi and Ballas get straight set wins in both of their matches, is what I'm looking for. And I'd like to see him dominate in doubles.
Will be a tricky matchup, top two, whether it's FAU, whether it's Sophia Johnson at ODU. Yeah, I think that's a good shout by you. And yeah, I would argue that FAU Old Dominion qualifies in that category of things you don't see often. I'd also put for number 9 seeded Auburn that Clemson Wisconsin first round match. I love that one. And let's say Wisconsin advances, the prospect of a Shalikova Bennett round 2 matchup, two players who have been in the top 10 pretty much all season. Um, Auburn hosts South Carolina State round 1. Again, Clemson, Wisconsin feels like it'll be a war in round 2. Two teams who did spend time in the top 25 this season. Jay, what are you looking for most from the Tigers?
Well, I thought they finished the season really well. They
Mm-hmm.
pushed A&M at home. So I think similar to Georgia, you're looking for a continuation there. I think I would like to see doubles. They should win both of these doubles points, particularly on that second day. Like if they're dropping that doubles point against either Clemson or Wisconsin, like it's just trouble. Moving deep in this tournament, they have to win that point, and they've been subpar most of the season. So that's probably the big thing I'm looking for Auburn.
Yeah, and I really like that Clemson Wisconsin match again. I will ask Jay for a prediction in it a little bit later. Let's move now to our second quarter of the draw. That, again, where fourth seeded Ohio State resides. I mean, again, Notre Dame's got a really gaudy record, but they avoided some of the biggest foes in the ACC still. The idea of Nishino versus, I think it's Posner, lined at that number 4 spot for Notre Dame. I love that one. Of course, Ohio State hosting Buffalo in round 1, Notre Dame hosting USC in round 2. Other lineup note to mention Chavez after playing number 1 and getting the win over Julia Fligner at Big Tens. She is back up to the number 1 spot. Perry's at 2. By the way, Ohio State vaulting to 4 after they fought off team match point in that win over Michigan. You were there, Jay. What was your takeaway from that in-person Ohio State experience?
Well, it was a fantastic match, and I did a full recap on it on my show, so we won't get into it too much here, so you can listen to that. But it was a fantastic college tennis match. It had everything. It had the overrules. It had the delays unexpectedly because of a water bottle thrown onto the court. The fans were really getting into it. It was a fantastic tennis match. Ohio State came out after doubles and looked fantastic at the top 4 singles spots. The fact that they're the number 4 seed, though, I texted you this. Like, if we didn't have Chris's website, that would be the massive shock when we saw this bracket that Ohio State is number 4, because honestly, the resume is not deserving of it. They're 1-2 against number 3 Michigan. They beat a Duke team without Liv Hovde, and they beat an NC State team without the full lineup back in January. Those are their 3 best wins. A number 4 team right now, they are not. However, they looked excellent in that win against Michigan, particularly at those top 2 spots. Getting Sydney Ratliff back to playing her better tennis is a huge win for them. So it was a fantastic win for them to beat Michigan in that final. And I'm curious to see how they perform here in NCAA's, because all of a sudden they go from being the hunter to now being the hunted.
Yeah, and obviously Ratliff, Berezniak, those are older pieces. Still a very young core for head coach Melissa Schaub and the Buckeyes. So, yeah, again, to have this sort of success right away, you're making a face. Perry, sophomore, Chavez and Spencer, sophomores, Nishino, freshman.
Yeah, Perry feels so much older to me. But yeah, I mean, both of Chavez and Perry both sophomores, huh?
Yeah, that's a really
That's
good class.
Yeah, that's
Really good
crazy.
class.
Yeah. I mean, they both read older. I think Perry reads older because she's been, at the top of the game for both 2 years, and then Chavez really has emerged this season. We knew what she could be, but yeah, I mean, the storyline, it was the Taya Chavez show in Ojai. It was really some spectacular stuff.
Yeah, we saw flashes of it last year. I'm glad you got to see it. Was the Rietsky comparison apt?
Yeah, I mean, the personalities are definitely very different.
Yeah.
But in terms of like big strokes, yeah, I think she's a better mover than Raetsky. Um, maybe a better athlete,
Mm.
but I mean, she just had the crowd captivated. And what's so fun about the Ojai event is the players in the junior event slash the players who train at Weil, they adopt the team basically to get behind for the duration of it. And they adopted Taya Chavez and then by proxy Ohio State because they were enthralled by her hitting and she was eating it up. And you can tell she's Canadian. She gives a lot of sorries out there and a lot of smiles out there. She's having fun, and the crowd got behind her, and therefore got behind Ohio State. And at Ojai, those top four courts are together, and then there's a little bit of a walkway to get down to 5 and 6. No surprise, Ohio State swept the top four given the crowd that they had, and that's despite Michigan having more partisan fans, probably more friends and family there from Michigan, but the Ojai neutral crowd became huge Ohio State fans.
Did Big Ten tennis fit in?
They were adopted.
Okay, okay, I like that.
Yeah.
But the acclimating process has begun.
I mean, I have to imagine that the players had a fantastic time. I know Ohio State did for sure. But I think the thing about the Ojai is the tennis crowd is extremely knowledgeable. They're
Love
there
that.
for good tennis, and so they will embrace it. And Ohio State certainly embraced it as well. And there's a reason that they won this event, and they had the crowd support.
Fair enough. Well, again, they've got Notre Dame, Gauche, Matsuno, Hanford, Posder. Like this team can play. I got to see a lot of them obviously in the ACC this year. Any sweating if you're the Bucks? Or you think they get through comfortably?
No, I think there is sweating because this is a huge moment for Ohio State. They win their fourth Big Ten tournament title in program history, first since 2021. They're the number 4 seed. I think it's going to be pretty easy to overlook these first 2 rounds. And unlike every other conference, the Big Ten only had 1 week to sort of turn back around. And keep in mind, Ohio is not close to Columbus, so travel involved as well. So the turnaround time is going to be tougher for Ohio State, definitely. And Notre Dame has been sitting back waiting for 2 weeks now. So I definitely think you could see them. It reminds me of some Michigan matches in the past where I feel like it gets a little squirrely in these first 2 rounds before they start to really flex.
All right, fair enough. Well, again, I assume you're picking Ohio State.
I am.
Okay, fair enough. Let's in
I
the
don't know
same.
for how long, but I'm picking them through this weekend.
Fair enough. This quarter, number 5 UNC. They host VCU. Round 1 would face the winner of Kansas, South Carolina in round number 2. Mobile versus Hamner. Sign me up. Winner of that versus Brantmeyer. Sign me up. UNC should be the heavy favorite. Obviously, there's a lot of institutional knowledge. North Carolina, South Carolina together for the third straight year, but you expect the Tar Heels to get through comfortably?
I mean, I think the South Carolina match in the second round could be interesting. I think particularly if South Carolina is healthy, we've seen them get good wins. It's kind of like the middle bottom of the lineup against some of these teams, even without Hamner at top. And that's where North Carolina is vulnerable right now, whether it's 2, 3, or 4. And so it wouldn't surprise me to see South Carolina take first sets in some of those matches, much like we saw in that Virginia match. But I think ultimately North Carolina will take doubles. They'll go up 1-0. I think they'll be able to find 3 others, and that might even be not from Brantmeyer, right? It might be a DNF there at number 1 versus Hamner. But I think they get through comfortably. Didn't talk about this yesterday on the reaction show, but I don't know how it missed me, but it hit me last night. North Carolina is just a massive, massive draw winner here. You could not have asked for a better draw for North Carolina. The non-top 8 seeds are the weakest in this region with NC State maybe not at their best and LSU sort of limping into the finish line. And a number 4 Ohio State team, who I would argue is probably not the fourth best team in the country, could not have asked for a better draw for North Carolina.
Does the NC State institutional knowledge help or does it hurt?
Well, it's not very existent, right? I mean, you talked about how young that NC State core is.
Yeah, fair. And the North Carolina core very new as well. Hamilton and even still Hill, obviously Evans and Radman weren't there for the final.
Well, and also, I mean, this is the draw gods helping North Carolina after really punishing them last season, sending Texas A&M to their super regional and handing those seniors their first ever home loss.
Very, very fair assessment. Yeah, I think that I almost had them. I have an asterisk next to both them and Ohio State as could have been in the if category, just because again the best version of South Carolina, then it does get a little sweaty. The best version of Notre Dame, Ohio State gets a little sweaty. I still would expect both to advance out of this. Thus, in the See You Next Weekend category. Next up, of course, want to take us over to the Michigan quarter of the draw, where I have yet to mention the Wolverines, your number 3 seeds. They take on Youngstown State. Round number 1, they win. They'll take on the winner of Arizona State and Ole Miss. Bouncing back from that first loss, obviously, to Ohio State last weekend. Jay, what do you see from the Wolverines? What do you want to see this weekend?
I didn't see a lot from the Wolverines this past weekend. Where do we want to go here? I
Yeah,
mean, I think they get through comfortably.
yeah.
Um, I think it might I think it's tough to bounce back after only having a week here. I think this was a crushing loss. The seniors on that team were going for 4 straight Big Ten tournament titles. They were 2-0 against Ohio State. Also to lose it in the fashion that they do, have Emily Starts Lunday get her third overrule at 3-all deuce in that third set to go down 3-5, just crushing. So I think it's emotional for them, but I don't think there's anything to be too worried about. So I think they get through fairly comfortably.
I
But
think,
I have questions longer term actually about this Michigan team.
yeah. What are they surrounding? Looked good in doubles this week. That was about it, but they look good in doubles.
Yeah, they look good in doubles, particularly that win over UCLA. If UCLA had gotten that doubles point, this would be a much more interesting match. I was surprised UCLA didn't. And the pairings of Michigan are odd in doubles. A lot of them play some pretty unorthodox doubles, particularly at one with Jones and Bernalis. But Bernalis really impressed me in doubles. I think they're just like ripe for an upset in that Sweet 16.
Interesting. I'll tell you this. No two players I would want on my team coming off of a loss heading into the NCAA tournament more than Julia. I'll say the full name just for the listeners. Julia Fliegner. Feels weird though, and Piper Charney. Like coming off of a loss that weekend before, I just think they're gonna the furiousness, particularly given that loss was to Ohio State. I think they could come out and just kill some people this weekend. And I'm not saying that they're not going to have battles, whether it's Texas in the round of 16, because there's a lot of youth across the board in that matchup, and whomever would be a potential quarterfinal opponent if seeds were to hold. I'm not saying that they're going to hold seed and breeze their way through to the semifinal. I think parity is going to be the name of the game in this postseason. But I think given that that loss started up top, like I think it's a good loss for Sarts Lundy to have before the tournament starts to bounce back from, and I just think for Julia and Piper, like I think they bounce back, and I think it's a big weekend for the Wolverines. Fascinated to see it play out.
Well, we could spend an hour on this with Michigan, but I don't disagree. I'm sure they will look good this weekend. That's not the concern, right? And I felt the same way that you did after Julia and Piper lost those first sets. I thought, no way they both go down, right, in straight sets, the first two off the court, but that happened. So in my bracket right now, they lose to Texas.
Put it on the billboard
I
somewhere
was
in
gonna
Ann
say,
Arbor.
you can take it to the bulletin board right
Yeah,
now.
you know, put that on on the ceiling, Piper and Julia, and see it every morning when you wake up, so that you know this is what you're fighting. Yeah, it's again going to be an interesting region and a very fun first round match. Arizona State and Ole Miss again.
Yeah,
One of those two
that's a
teams.
fun one.
Yeah, two teams you don't see play very often. Other three teams in this section were in the upset or if category. So over we go to the final quarter of the draw. Haven't talked much about Texas A&M. Number 2 seeds, of course, they're going to play host Texas A&M to this weekend. Quinnipiac in round 1, and the winner of Rice UCSB. Another really fun one in the first round. still, like, this is A&M. What is it now? After their win over Georgia, it was like 67
Yeah,
straight wins or
68,
something.
I
Yeah,
think.
it's something crazy at home. This is where they thrive. I do not I expect them to look good here in the opening weekend.
Yeah, I expect it as well. Hopefully, we get the Stoyana honor match there at number one. Probably not finish, but a good send off for Amelia Honor if they can get through Rice.
Yeah, absolutely. And then last but not least, how about Virginia? They host FDU round number one, then a potential match with the winner of Illinois Arizona, which, by the way, that match will go 3.5 hours. And they have 4 teams or 8 teams on site in Charlottesville this week. I know it'll be round one will be one day on its own, but if the men play first and the women play second, haven't looked at the times yet. Saturday's going to be a 24-hour day because I'm telling you, like, just put 3.5 hours on the clock. It's going to be grinds on all 6 courts, Illinois, Arizona. How much gas will be left in the tank when the winner of that takes on Virginia will be fascinating to see. But, Jay, your thoughts on the region, your thoughts on who's we even see this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, Kozakova listed at 6, which is a super odd place for her to be because I don't think there's a coach in the country that's looking at that and saying, oh, yeah, Coach O'Leary is not going to play Melody Collard in singles. So it very much reads as she's not playing. I think you should have listed her at like 4, where she was kind of earlier this season, and that throws some chaos into the mix. But yeah, I think you nailed it. This Illinois Arizona match is another really fun first round match. Unfortunately for them, they're gonna have to turn around the next day and play Virginia, so probably not much left in the tank. But I'm excited for it. I think Virginia will look like they did in the ACC tournament. What you're watching for is if they do play Kozakova and how Lacey looks as well. Lacey clearly injured in that ACC final. So that's what I'm looking for. But I think Virginia gets through comfortably, even though they normally get a fairly weak region. And that's not the case this year. They're going to have a test in that second round.
Absolutely. Again, a lot of fun matches on the board. So to recap, that's all 16 regions. And, Jay, I only got one upset out of you as we looked at all the regions. Perhaps you'll give me some upsets or some frisky calls here as we move to the most intriguing round one matches. And what I want to do here, I'm just going to name them. I've got a bunch on the list. You just give me a winner. That work for you?
Sure.
All right, Pepperdine Wake.
Pepperdine.
That's number one on my list. Wisconsin Clemson.
I'm going to go Clemson.
I'll go Wisconsin.
Yeah, because I knew you would.
That's going to be so good. Clemson really young as well. South Carolina, Kansas.
South Carolina.
FAU, Old Dominion.
Give me Old Dominion.
All right, I'll go FAU. Rice, UCSB.
Go UCSB.
Rice is good. I just shout out to the Blair Henley Owls. Rice is good. I'll go UCSB as well. Arizona State, Ole Miss.
Oof.
I'm going the other way as you, so you get first pick.
Okay. Well, I had Coach Jimmy Jackson on the show. I'll go Arizona State.
That's fine. I'll go the Ole Miss route. Illinois,
that
Arizona.
Super fun.
Yeah. Illinois, Arizona.
I'm gonna go Illinois.
That one's gonna be so good.
Yeah.
I got to see Arizona in person. I got to see Illinois in person. Similar in my mind. Similar impressions were left. I'll go Arizona. Fine. Yeah, nah. I spent a lot of time in Champaign. More time in Tucson of late. I'll go Illinois. Georgia Tech, Iowa.
Georgia Tech.
I want you to know it took every bit of self-restraint to not come on the show tonight and make the case that Georgia Tech could beat Georgia. And that is restraint, Jay. I've matured. I'll take Georgia Tech as well. UCF, Furman.
UCF.
I'll go with the Knights as well. USC, Memphis.
USC.
All right, I like it. Best individual matchups last but not least here, Jay, just to run you through some of them I keep an eye on. Bennett Shalikova, Mulville Hamner, winner playing Brantmeyer, Stoyana versus Honor, Duke versus FAU, Stanford versus FIU, just because I want to see the reps. Which of those pops out most to you?
Well, I know I'm picking the Stanford-Texas Tech match, but there's a world where this FAU match gets very tricky because Stanford is kind of overlooking it. But, I mean, I guess Bennett, Shalikova, I feel like Shalikova hasn't had a moment really since All-Americans. And certainly if she gets a shot at Bennett in that second round, then she should take it. So I would go that one.
Better two singles match, Dmitrichenko versus Glazman or Garcia Ruiz versus Komar?
I've seen Garcia Ruiz versus Komar last season, so I'm gonna go Dimitrenko versus Glossman.
Win-win. Cruz Lapata, by the way, belongs on that short list of number 2 singles as
Oh,
well.
that doesn't finish.
Yeah, you're right. I have Ghosh Ratliff on this and Wagle Stamel as my 3 singles matchups. I love those battles.
Yeah, I mean, how about Ratliff, MVP of the Big Ten tournament? I mean, that is a huge addition. I say addition because she feels like she's back now this season for Ohio State. So I really like that. And Wagle looked good in the Big Ten tournament as well. And, Stamel has been really solid for Vandy all season long. Those
Yeah,
are two really good matches.
I have Nishino Posner on there, and then doubles points you won't want to miss. USC LSU, UCF NC State, Notre Dame Ohio State, and Georgia Tech Georgia. Those are some of the doubles points that I would just make sure I'm locked in those first 40 minutes.
First two, definitely. Second two, I think you can miss. But yeah, I'm excited about USC and LSU and UCF NC State.
That's fine. You're wrong. No, I like it. And again, more broadly, it's going to be really fun. Round number 1 coverage, of course, begins Friday on our Cracked Rackets YouTube channel. We will have plenty of content throughout. We might have to go live after each and every night, just given how play progresses and whether it's with Chris, whether it's with UJ. Obviously, looking forward to providing all of the coverage. That said, I don't know if there's any other angle to look at round number 1 and 2 from this opening weekend of play. I think we hit it, Jay. Any final thoughts? Any content preview you can offer to college tennis fans tuning in tonight?
I don't know. You've been taking up some of my time here these last 2 days, so I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think if you're curious about the Ohio State Michigan match, you want to hear more about that. I did the Big Ten. A huge fan of the Ohio and what they do there, so definitely check that out. I have been taking a look at some of these match times, and I'm not super pleased with those. So we might have to fire off a little tweet about that, but no, otherwise, I'm looking forward to this weekend.
I like it. Well, as always, my friend, I appreciate you offering your time. It is not overlooked how much you offer here to us at Cracked Rackets, and again, would be impossible to do this show without you. So shout out to you. Shout out, of course, to our super producer Daniel Westoff. Fuck of an editing job night in, night out, making everything possible. Shout out to the support we get from our friends at Laurel Springs as well. Let me tell you, nothing makes me more uncomfortable than dropping an F-bomb and then talking about Laurel Springs School. So I'm gonna have to switch up the order of that moving forward, but wouldn't be able to do this without their support. So sincerely, shout out to them. And if you want to hear from 3 fantastic teachers, part of that Laurel Springs School program, I think the most fun 10 minutes I've had on any show this year is in my interview with the 3 of them. So go listen to the end of that tomorrow. It gets a little goofy. We have some serious fun. With that said, for the fantastic John J. Parsons to my left, super producer Daniel Westoff, and from all of us here at both Crack Rackets and the Believe Podcast Network, I'm your host, Alex Gruskin. Jay, what do we tell our listeners?
Hey, great shot.
We will see you all tomorrow night. Thanks, everyone.